Well, hello. And I thought that I should make an effort and share with the public the details of my book with my Back to Havana. I published in 2019. And I'm going to start this podcast by sharing one episode at a time, one chapter of the book at a time. And I'm not going to read it verbatim. I think that's probably easier for you, for the public to read it. But I wanted to go into some of the paragraphs and some of the details, what I mentioned in the book, just to get your interest and just to give you a general idea. Maybe you don't want to read the book, just listen to the podcast and tell your friends about it. Okay. And the first chapter is called Prison Island. Prison Island, and I know, and I mentioned it here. I know it sounds like harsh synonym for the country where you were born. And some people in Cuba may call it Deathland, or there's others, right? And the truth is, Cuba is an island. And more than that, it's a prison island, right? You don't have Cubans, not you. Cubans don't have the option to leave the country, right? We're not free to cross the borders. While in many countries, however economic situation they may have, it's fairly easy if you can afford it to get a passport and buy a ticket and get a visa to travel elsewhere, or even to travel to a country that does not require a visa. Cubans cannot do that as easily. To get a passport in Cuba, you need to get a permit. To get a permit, needs to be approved by the government, and then that's where we are locked in, right? Um, it is a little easier now, but when I left Cuba in 1994, September 1994, it was extremely difficult to leave Cuba. People falsify papers, but that was a minority, very, very tiny minority. The big bulk of any migration from Cuba, especially during this time in 1994, it was just to jump on the sea with a tiny raft and just pray and hope that you can make it to the United States. And that's what I did with my family. So it is a prison island because we cannot leave. We are trapped inside the country. We don't have borders with other countries. Our borders are the sea, the ocean, and we need to cross it in order to escape, right? We don't leave Cuba. I feel most of us escape, right? And if you listen to all my other content, you will know that I haven't visited Cuba since I left in 1994. It is very difficult for me to justify returning to the place where I had to escape from. And I don't criticize those who do. I have relatives and friends that travel to Cuba all the time. They have family, they have relatives, they have memories, history over there. But for me personally, I cannot justify returning to the place that took everything from me to escape from. Um, I recall in the book how we sold everything. We sold the sofa. We sold the decoration on the wall of our little house. My mom, and by us I mean my mom, my brother, and I. We chose to sell everything so that we can collect a few dollars, and with that, we bought a tiny boat together with another family. We combined our funds, and we bought a tiny boat. We bought a little engine that broke right away. We bought some food. We bought some floating devices just in case, and altogether, so our side of the family was three, right? Actually, four with a cousin. But on the other side, there were kids, like minors. So altogether, there was 11 of us. Three were under 18. Two of them were like 7 and 11 years old. So they were kids, little kids, that their family, their parents thought that the best chance for the future was to escape this prison island. And the way to do that was to cross a sea, cross 90 miles of open ocean in a handmade makeshift boat. So just to read a little bit from the book, um, just we ended up leaving in the afternoon, like 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun settled, Not much after that, like around 7. And by 8, 9 o'clock, we were open ocean, but we could still see Havana behind us, the lights of the seaport and whatnot in the city. And we were exhausted. We were honestly building that boat for about a week and change, maybe 10 days, gathering supplies and making repairs. The boat was probably leaking when we bought it. I don't remember, but I know we've spent about 10 days working on the boat. By the time we got on the boat and left Cuba, we were exhausted, all of us, right? All of us, myself included. Even as an 18-year-old, I was exhausted, and I feel from my recollection, we all either dozed off or started falling asleep. And I woke up, and this is the portion I recall in the book. I woke up to a roaring sound, a rumbling first, then roaring, then louder and louder. And I didn't say anything, but people started waking up and like looking around, and I could hear where the sound was coming from. The sound was coming from the open ocean. We were in the middle, and then behind us, Havana, right? But the sound was coming towards us, but I couldn't see a thing. And as the sound got louder and louder, I started to see an outline. And to my fear, it was a steamship line. It was a container, container ship, right? A big ship full of containers, hundreds of feet tall, and we were just a tiny fisherman boat with 11 people and 2 kids on it. And it was terrifying because we were underway, right? And there's no way that big ship saw us. There's no way. They were heading towards the Havana port, and we were on their way. Panic ensued. Everybody started rowing in every direction possible, and eventually we sort of moved to the left of where we were, and the ship passed to our right. It moved our tiny boat into big waves, and it was very scary and all that. Nothing happened, luckily. We didn't have any issues. We didn't lose anything or anyone. But it was scary. It was a scary wake-up call that we knew what we were doing was dangerous, but it was a fresh reminder of how dangerous. Soon after, we settled, and the boat settled on the waves, and the sea calmed again. And from that point forward, I don't think anyone else slept, at least not the adults, and the big teenagers like myself and my brother. And then that's when we started taking turns and really like rowing north, trying to get away from Havana and trying to break that space and reach what is called the international line. Right? We knew that we needed to cross the international line and get away from Cuban waters so that the U.S. Coast Guard could eventually rescue us. So, in short, sort of short, that is the first chapter on my book, With My Back to Havana. Maybe I'll go into a little more detail of what happened and what I felt at the time, but I wanted to start this collection of videos where I tell folks what the book's about, what each chapter is about, with my own words, not just reading. I think this is a little more natural and more fun. So if you enjoy it, let me know. If you have any questions, if you have any questions about the topic, any questions for me, if you lived through it, if you left Cuba in a raft and you want to talk to me about it, just message me and we'll talk about it. And if you're open to it, we can do an interview. So thank you for listening. Again, Alberto Marinas here, With My Back to Havana. Keep an eye on the next chapter.